The red dust of Kepler 442 bits swirled around Marcus Chen's boots as he walked through the colony's market district. The air recyclers wheezed overhead, struggling against the planet's thin atmosphere. 3 years on this godforsaken rock, and he still wasn't used to the metallic taste that clung to everything. The morning shift at the lithium mines had ended early again. Another equipment failure, another day of lost profits. Marcus pulled his jacket tighter as he passed the ramshackle stalls where colonists hawked salvaged goods and synthetic food packets. The place reeked of desperation. That's when he saw her. The Zephyrian woman knelt beside a collapsed shelter, her pale blue skin almost translucent in the harsh artificial lighting. Her elongated limbs trembled as she gathered scattered belongings: torn fabric, a broken data pad, children's toys made from scrap metal. 2 small figures huddled behind her, their large dark eyes wide with fear. Marcus had seen plenty of Zephyrians during his time on the colony. They'd arrived 5 years ago as part of the Galactic Mining Consortium's alien labor program. Cheap workers, the company called them. Disposable, others whispered. But this one looked different. Broken. "Hey," Marcus called out, approaching slowly. He'd learned that sudden movements spooked them. "You okay?" The woman's head snapped up, revealing delicate features marred by exhaustion. Her eyes, those characteristic violet orbs that seemed to see right through you, filled with tears. She tried to blink away. "Please," she whispered in accented standard. Her voice carried the musical quality all Zephyrians possessed, but it cracked with emotion. "Please, do not call security." Marcus raised his hands peacefully. "I'm not calling anyone. What happened here?" "Eviction notice." She held up a crumpled document. "My mate, my Khal. He died in collapse 3 months ago. Tunnel 7. I cannot pay rent alone." The tunnel collapse. Marcus remembered it. 16 workers buried, including 12 Zephyrians. The company had paid minimal death benefits, claiming the aliens' contracts included inherent risk clauses. Standard corporate procedure. The woman's children, a boy and girl who couldn't be more than 8 in human years, pressed closer to their mother. Their clothes were patched and repatched, but clean. Someone was trying hard to maintain dignity in impossible circumstances. "I am Lyria," the woman said, struggling to her feet. She was tall, even for a Zephyrian, but painfully thin. "These are my offspring, Zen and Kira." "Marcus," he replied. "Marcus Chen." Something in his tone must have reassured her because her defensive posture relaxed slightly. "You are human engineer, yes. I have seen you at mining complex." He nodded. "Maintenance supervisor." "Look, where are you planning to go?" Lyria's composure crumbled. "I do not know. Company housing only for active workers. Shelter requires proof of income. We have." She glanced at her children, switching to rapid Zephyrian. Marcus caught enough words to understand she was trying not to frighten them further. "Food?" 2 days of ration packets. Her voice was barely audible. Marcus felt something twist in his chest. He'd seen poverty before. Hell, half the human colonists lived paycheck to paycheck. But there was something about this woman's quiet desperation that got to him. Maybe it was the way she kept smoothing her daughter's hair, or how the boy clutched a toy shuttle made from bent wire and hope. "There's a shelter on the south side," he offered, "run by the Interfaith Coalition. They do not accept aliens without sponsors," Lyria said quietly. "I have asked." Of course they didn't. Marcus cursed under his breath. The colony's human population barely tolerated the Zephyrian workers when times were good. Now, with the mine production falling and rumors of shutdown, tensions were rising daily. "Look," Marcus found himself saying, "I've got a small apartment. Nothing fancy, but it's warm and dry. You and the kids can stay there tonight while we figure something out." Lyria stared at him as if he'd spoken in an alien tongue. You would. Why would you help us? The question hit him harder than it should have. Why was he helping? Marcus had spent 3 years keeping his head down, doing his job, avoiding complications. He'd learned early that getting involved in other people's problems was a luxury he couldn't afford. But looking at this woman, this widow trying to hold her family together in a universe that seemed determined to tear them apart, he couldn't walk away. Because it's the right thing to do, he said simply. Lyria's eyes widened. She spoke rapidly to her children in their native language. The boy, Zen, stepped forward and spoke in careful standard. My mother asks if you are certain. We do not want to cause trouble for human friend. No trouble, Marcus assured him. Come on, let's get you out of this wind. As they gathered their meager possessions, Marcus wondered what the hell he was getting himself into. The colony had strict regulations about human-alien interactions outside of work. But looking at Kira's trusting smile and Zen's protective stance beside his mother, Marcus decided he'd worry about the rules later. Some things were more important than regulations. Marcus's apartment was a standard company unit, 2 small rooms, a kitchenette, and a bathroom with a sonic shower that worked half the time. But to Lyria and her children, it must have seemed like a palace. Kira ran her fingers along the clean walls while Zen examined the furniture with scientific curiosity. Lyria stood in the doorway, overwhelmed. The children may sleep here, she asked, gesturing to the main room's fold-out couch. Of course, I'll take the floor. No. Her voice carried surprising firmness. You have shown great kindness. I will not take your sleeping place. Marcus studied her face. Beneath the exhaustion and worry, he glimpsed the pride that kept her spine straight despite everything. The couch converts to a bed. It's actually more comfortable than my mattress. It was a lie, but she seemed to accept it. Over the next few hours, Marcus watched Lyria transform his sterile living space into something resembling a home. She organized their few belongings with careful precision, helped the children wash up, and somehow created a meal from his basic food supplies that actually tasted good. You're a good cook, Marcus said as they shared a dinner of reconstituted protein and hydroponic vegetables. Kale always said so. The pain that crossed her features was sharp and immediate. He loved my Celt cakes, said they reminded him of his mother's cooking on Zephyr Prime. Tell me about him, Marcus said gently. Lyria's violet eyes grew distant. He was tunnel foreman. Strong, careful worker. Never took risks. Her voice caught. Except that day. Another worker, young human named Porras, was trapped when support beam failed. Kale went back for him. Did Torres make it out? Yes. He lives in Sector C now with wife and baby. But Kale. She touched a small pendant at her throat. Some kind of crystalline stone that pulsed with faint inner light. In our culture, we say the honored dead become stars to guide the living. But I feel very lost. Zen reached over and squeezed his mother's hand. The gesture was so human, so universal, that Marcus felt his throat tighten. How old are they? He asked, changing the subject. In your years, Zen is 9, Kira is 7. But Zephyrian children mature faster emotionally. They understand much about our situation. As if to prove her point, Kira spoke up in her piping voice. Mama cries at night when she thinks we sleep. She is scared. Kira, Lyria chided gently. It's okay, Marcus said. Being scared doesn't make you weak. It makes you smart. That night, after the children had fallen asleep, Marcus found Lyria standing at the small window that looked out over the colony. The mining complex's lights twinkled in the distance like earthbound stars. Thank you, she said without turning around. Not just for shelter. For treating us as people. What do you mean? Most humans here see us as tools. Useful for dangerous work, but not truly alive. Not capable of love or grief or hope. She turned to face him. But you asked about Cal. You listened to his story. Marcus moved to stand beside her. I've worked with Zephyrians for 3 years. I've seen how hard you fight for your families, how you take care of each other. Anyone who thinks you're just tools is an idiot. A small smile touched her lips, the first genuine expression of happiness he'd seen from her. You are unusual human, Marcus Chen. So I've been told. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the night shift begin their trek to the mines. Finally, Lyria spoke again. I must find work soon. Credits will not last long, even with your generosity. What kind of work did you do before? I was teacher on Zephyr Prime. Literature and cultural history. But here, she shrugged. Only mining jobs for aliens. And they will not hire widow with children. Too much liability. An idea began forming in Marcus's mind. It was crazy, probably illegal, and definitely career suicide. But looking at this remarkable woman who'd lost everything and still maintained her dignity, he found himself speaking before his rational brain could stop him. What if there was another option? What do you mean? Marcus took a deep breath. Colony regulations allow human residents to sponsor alien dependents. Spouses, children, family members. Lyria's eyes widened as she grasped his implication. You cannot mean. I'm not saying anything yet. Just thinking out loud. He turned to face her fully. But if someone was willing to enter a formal partnership, a marriage of convenience, it would give you legal status, work authorization, housing rights. The silence stretched between them like a taut wire. When Lyria finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. You would do this for strangers? You're not strangers anymore, Marcus realized. Not after tonight. The next morning brought harsh reality crashing down like the artificial dawn cycle that never quite felt natural. Marcus woke to find Lyria already awake, sitting at his small table with official documents spread before her. Deportation notice, she said without looking up. All unemployed alien residents must report for processing within 72 hours. Marcus's blood ran cold. He'd heard rumors about the processing centers on the outer colonies. Overcrowded holding facilities where aliens waited months or years for transport to nowhere in particular. Families were routinely separated. Children ended up in institutional care. We can't let that happen, he said. Lyria's laugh was bitter. This is not your burden, Marcus. You have done enough. But as he watched Zen help his sister with breakfast, both children trying to maintain normalcy while their world collapsed around them, Marcus knew he was already in too deep to back out now. About what I said last night, please. Lyria held up her hand. Do not make offers from guilt or pity. I will not accept charity disguised as love. It wouldn't be charity, Marcus said quietly. And I'm not talking about love. Not yet, anyway. I'm talking about partnership. Mutual respect. A chance for all of us to build something better. Lyria studied his face intently. You understand what you would be taking on. 2 children who need schooling, medical care, emotional support after losing their father. A wife who may never love you as she loved her first mate. A life linked to aliens in a colony that grows more hostile each day. I understand the risks. And the benefits. What do you gain from this arrangement? The question caught him off guard. Marcus had been so focused on their desperate situation that he hadn't really considered his own motivations. But looking at Lyria now, her intelligent eyes, her quiet strength, the way she transformed his empty apartment into a home in just one night, he realized there were benefits he hadn't even acknowledged to himself. I get a family, he said simply. I get to matter to someone besides myself. Before Lyria could respond, a sharp knock echoed through the apartment. Marcus opened the door to find Torres. The young miner Kale had died saving, standing in the corridor with his wife and baby. Marcus, Torres said nervously. I People are saying you're harboring illegals. They're not illegals. I know who they are. Torres stepped inside, his wife following with obvious reluctance. Lyria, right? Kale's widow. Lyria rose slowly, her expression guarded. Yes. I need to say something. Torres's voice cracked. About your husband. About what happened in the tunnel. The room fell silent except for the hum of the air recyclers. Even the children stopped eating to listen. It wasn't an accident, Torres continued. The tunnel collapse. Management knew that section was unstable. They'd had 3 safety reports in 2 weeks, but they kept pushing production quotas. He looked directly at Lyria. Kale tried to get them to evacuate the area. When they refused, he went in anyway to get the workers out. Lyria's composure finally cracked. She sank into her chair, overwhelmed by grief and rage. Why are you telling me this? She whispered. Because you deserve to know the truth. And because, Torres glanced at his wife, who nodded encouragingly. Because we want to help. My Maria, she runs a child care center in Sector B. She could take Zen and Kira during the day if you find work. But they are alien children, Lyria protested. Maria stepped forward, speaking for the first time. Children are children. Besides, my center already serves 3 Zephyrian families. The kids love learning about different cultures. Marcus felt a surge of hope. If there were other humans willing to help, maybe this crazy plan could actually work. There's something else, Torres added. A group of us miners, human and Zephyrian, both, we're organizing. Trying to get better safety standards, fair pay, proper death benefits. We could use someone with your education to help with the legal documentation. Lyria looked up sharply. You would trust Alien with such work? Kale saved my life, Torres said firmly. That makes you family as far as I'm concerned. After Torres and Maria left, the apartment felt charged with new possibility. But Lyria remained troubled. Even with their help, the legal situation remains, she said. Without proper status, I cannot work officially, cannot stay long-term. Marcus took a deep breath. Then we make it official. Marcus, I'm serious. We go to the Colonial Registry today. File a partnership papers. Make this legal. Lyria stood and walked to the window again, her favorite spot for thinking. The children watched her anxiously. In Zephyrian culture, she said finally, marriage is sacred bond. Not just between individuals, but between souls. When my mate died, I thought that part of me died too. I'm not asking you to replace what you had with Kale, Marcus said. I'm asking you to consider building something new, something different but real. She turned to face him, and Marcus saw something shift in her expression, a door opening to possibility. If we do this, she said carefully, what would you expect from me? As your wife? The question hung heavy with implication. Marcus chose his words carefully. I'd expect honesty, respect, partnership in raising the children and building a life together. Everything else, he shrugged. Everything else we figure out as we go. Lyria nodded slowly. And if feelings develop between us, or if they do not, then we deal with that too, like any couple. For the first time since he met her, Lyria smiled, really smiled, with hope instead of just politeness. Very well, Marcus Chen, she said. I will be your wife. The Colonial Registry office smelled like disinfectant and broken dreams. Marcus and Lyria sat in uncomfortable plastic chairs, surrounded by other couples seeking various permits and certifications. A few stared openly at them, the human man and alien woman with 2 children huddled close between them. Next, called the clerk, a middle-aged woman whose expression suggested she'd seen it all and been disappointed by most of it. They approached the counter with their carefully prepared documents. Birth certificates, death certificate for Kale, Marcus's employment records, medical clearances. Everything the Byzantine colonial bureaucracy required. Partnership application, the clerk read aloud, her tone dripping with barely concealed disdain. Human-alien union. Haven't seen one of these in a while. Is there a problem? Marcus asked evenly. Just making sure you understand the implications. Once this is filed, you're legally responsible for all 4 individuals. Any debts, medical expenses, legal troubles, it all becomes yours. I understand. The clerk's fingers flew over her data pad with practiced efficiency. After several minutes, she frowned. There's a flag on the alien registrations. Deportation order pending. Marcus's heart sank, but Lyria stepped forward with surprising composure. That is why we are here, she said calmly. To resolve status before deportation proceeds. The clerk seemed to enjoy the discomfort. I'll need to verify with colonial administration. This could take days. How long exactly? Marcus pressed. Could be a week. Could be a month. Depends on their backlog. Marcus felt the situation slipping away. In 72 hours, Lyria and the children were supposed to report for deportation processing. A week would be too late. That's when Zen stepped forward. Excuse me, please, the boy said politely. His standard was nearly perfect despite his slight accent. May I ask question? The clerk looked surprised but nodded. My father died saving human worker. I have documentation. Zen produced a small data chip from his pocket. Company gave memorial citation. Says he was hero who gave life for colonial safety. The clerk inserted the chip into her reader. Her expression shifted as she read the citation. Your father was Cal Threnody, the tunnel foreman. Yes, honored clerk. He taught me that helping others is highest duty. Now Mother helps organize worker safety group. She helps humans and Zephyrians together. Zen's young voice carried remarkable dignity. Is this not what colony needs? People who work together instead of apart? Marcus stared at the boy in amazement. Where had this eloquence come from? The clerk seemed equally impressed. She studied the documents again, her demeanor noticeably softer. Well, she said finally, there is an expedited processing option for special circumstances. War heroes, essential personnel, exceptional cases. She looked meaningfully at the memorial citation. I suppose a widow of a colonial hero trying to continue her husband's work of bringing communities together might qualify. Would that resolve the deportation order? Lyria asked hopefully. If approved, yes. Your family would receive immediate resident status pending the partnership application. What do we need to do? The clerk's smile was the first genuine expression they'd seen from her. Sign here. And here. Initial there. She processed their documents with newfound efficiency. Provisional approval granted. Full partnership certification should be processed within a week. As they left the registry office, Marcus felt like he could breathe again. But Lyria seemed subdued. What's wrong? He asked as they walked through the market district. Zen should not have needed to perform for human approval, she said quietly. In that office, we were not people seeking legal union. We were curiosities to be examined and judged. But it worked. This time. What happens next time when he is not there to charm them with his tragedy? The question hung between them as they returned to the apartment. That evening, as the children did homework at the kitchen table, Marcus and Lyria sat on the converted couch discussing practical arrangements. We should establish boundaries, Lyria said. Expectations for this partnership. Okay, what do you need? Space to grieve when I need it. Respect for Zephyrian customs, especially regarding the children's education. And, she hesitated. Time. This arrangement may become real marriage someday, but I cannot promise when or how. Fair enough. What else? I will contribute equally to household expenses once I find work. I will share cooking, cleaning, childcare duties. I will be partner, not dependent. Marcus nodded. And I'll try to learn about Zephyrian culture. Be a good stepfather to Zen and Kira. Share my world with them while respecting theirs. They shook hands solemnly, sealing their unusual bargain. Later that night, Marcus lay on his narrow bed, listening to the soft sounds of his new family settling into sleep. Kira's musical humming. Zen's whispered prayers in Zephyrian. Lyria's careful movements as she checked on both children. 3 days ago, he'd been a lonely bachelor counting down his contract on a failing mining colony. Now he was a husband and father, responsible for 3 lives and committed to making a relationship work with a woman who might never love him. It should have terrified him. Instead, for the first time in years, Marcus Chen felt like he was exactly where he belonged. 2 weeks into their marriage of convenience, Marcus discovered that Lyria sang while she cooked. It wasn't the haunting harmonies he'd heard other Zephyrians perform during their cultural celebrations. This was something softer, more intimate, lullabies and folk songs that seemed to make even reconstituted protein taste like home. "That's beautiful," he said one evening, finding her at the stove preparing dinner. She blushed, her pale blue skin taking on a lavender tinge. Old habit. Cale used to request his favorite songs. The mention of her late husband no longer brought the sharp pain it once had, Marcus noticed. Grief was becoming gentler memory. "Don't stop on my account," he said. "I like it." Their domestic routine had settled into something surprisingly comfortable. Marcus worked his maintenance shifts, while Lyria attended meetings with the Workers' Safety Coalition, her teaching background proving invaluable in organizing documentation and training materials. The children attended Maria's child care center, where they quickly made friends among both human and Zephyrian kids. But tonight felt different. There was tension in Lyria's posture that hadn't been there before. "Bad day?" Marcus asked. "The coalition received official response to our safety petition," she said without turning around. "Colonial administration rejected all recommendations. They claim current safety standards are adequate. Even after the tunnel collapse. They classified it as acceptable operational loss. 6 human lives and 10 Zephyrian lives, acceptable." Her voice carried barely controlled fury. Marcus felt his own anger rising. What's the coalition planning to do? Torres wants to organize work stoppage. Shut down the mines until they improve conditions. Lyria finally turned to face him. But strike action violates our residency agreements. Any alien who participates could face immediate deportation. The cruel irony wasn't lost on Marcus. The very people most affected by dangerous working conditions were the ones least able to protest them. "There has to be another way," he said. Before Lyria could respond, Zen burst through the door with Kira close behind. Both children were flushed with excitement. "Mama, Marcus," Zen called out. "We have wonderful news. Mrs. Torres says our class can enter the Colonial Education Fair," Kira added breathlessly. All the children made projects about their families' cultures. Lyria knelt to their level. "That sounds amazing. What did you create?" Zen proudly produced a small holographic projector, clearly cobbled together from salvaged electronics. "I made presentation on Zephyrian funeral traditions. How we honor the dead by becoming living stars for our families." Kira held up a beautifully illustrated book. "I wrote stories about Papa's work in the mines, about how he saved people." Marcus felt his throat tighten as he looked at their creations. These children had transformed their trauma into art, their loss into celebration of their father's memory. "They're incredible," he said honestly. "You should be proud." "Will you come to the fair?" Zen asked hopefully. "Both of you? As our parents?" The simple question hit Marcus like a physical blow. In 2 weeks, these children had accepted him as family with a resilient adaptability that made them stronger than most adults he knew. "Of course we'll be there," Lyria said, her eyes bright with unshed tears. That night, after the children had gone to bed, Marcus found Lyria on the small balcony that served as their apartment's only outdoor space. She was holding her pendant, the crystalline stone that had belonged to Tikale, and staring up at the stars. "Regrets?" he asked gently. "The opposite," she said. "I was just thinking about how much has changed. When Cal died, I thought my life was over, that I was just existing for the children's sake. And now I feel alive again. Not the same as before, but alive in a new way." She turned to study his face in the dim light. "I did not expect to care for you, Marcus Chen." The admission hung between them like a bridge neither had dared to cross before. "I care for you too," he said quietly, "even though I may never love you the way I loved him." Marcus considered the question seriously. Over the past weeks, he'd watched Lyria emerge from grief like a flower finding sunlight. He'd seen her fierce protectiveness with the children, her passionate advocacy for the workers, her gentle humor when she thought no one was watching. He'd fallen for her gradual smile, her stubborn independence, her strength that manifested as quiet grace rather than loud defiance. "I don't want you to love me like you loved him," Marcus said finally. "I want you to love me like you love me. If that happens—" Lyria moved closer, close enough that he could see the faint luminescence that seemed to emanate from her skin in darkness, a trait all Zephyrians possessed but few humans ever noticed. "I think," she said carefully, "it may already be happening." When she kissed him, it was soft and tentative at first, then deeper as he responded. It tasted like hope and possibility, like two people choosing to build something together instead of just surviving alone. When they finally broke apart, Marcus realized that somewhere in the past 2 weeks, their marriage of convenience had become something real. Not the desperate passion Lyria had shared with her first love, but something equally valuable. A partnership built on mutual respect, shared purpose, and growing affection. "So what happens now?" he asked. Lyria smiled, and in that moment, she looked more beautiful than any human woman he'd ever known. "Now we figure out how to save our colony," she said. "Together." The Colonial Education Fair transformed the usually dreary community center into something magical. Children's artwork covered the walls, science projects lined tables, and the air buzzed with excited voices in a dozen different languages, human dialects mixing with Zephyrian harmonics, Altaran clicks, and the whistling tones of the few cetacean families who'd settled on the colony. Marcus stood with Lyria watching Zen demonstrate his holographic funeral display to a fascinated crowd of adults and children. The boy had inherited his mother's gift for education, explaining their customs with patient dignity that impressed even the most skeptical human observers. "Your son is remarkable," said Administrator Walsh, the colony's chief civilian official. She'd stopped by Zen's display and stayed for nearly 15 minutes, asking thoughtful questions about Zephyrian beliefs regarding death and remembrance. "Thank you," Lyria replied with quiet pride. Both children had adapted well to their new life. Walsh studied the family group, Marcus with his arm around Lyria, Kira leaning against her stepmother's side, while Zen continued his presentation. "I have to admit, when I heard about your unusual marriage arrangement, I had concerns. But seeing you all together," she smiled. "Sometimes unconventional solutions work better than traditional ones." After Walsh moved on, Marcus squeezed Lyria's hand. "Think she's softening toward the alien families?" "Perhaps. Or perhaps she simply recognizes that integration serves everyone's interests." They were interrupted by Torres jogging up to them, his expression urgent. "Lyria, you need to see this. There's been an accident at Mine Shaft 4. The festive atmosphere suddenly felt hollow as they followed Torres to a quiet corner where several coalition members had gathered around a data pad displaying emergency reports. 3 workers trapped, Torres explained grimly. "Ceiling collapse in the new expansion tunnel, the one we specifically flagged as unstable in our safety petition." "Casualties?" Lyria asked. 2 humans, one Zephyrian. All alive but injured. They're calling for volunteer rescue crews. Marcus felt his stomach drop. Let me guess. They want miners to risk their lives fixing a problem that shouldn't have existed in the first place. And if we refuse, they'll blame us for not caring about our fellow workers, another coalition member added bitterly. Lyria was quiet for a long moment, studying the rescue reports. Finally, she looked up with an expression Marcus had learned to recognize. His wife had an idea. What if we turn this into an opportunity? She said slowly. What do you mean? Colonial administration is here tonight. So are news reporters covering the education fair. What if we use this rescue operation to demonstrate proper safety protocols? Show them how things should be done. Torres frowned. How would that work? We volunteer for the rescue mission, Lyria continued, but we insist on doing it right. Full safety equipment, proper structural assessments, adequate support teams. We document everything. Show the colony what responsible mining operations look like. And if administration refuses to provide proper equipment? Marcus asked, though he was beginning to see the brilliance of her plan. Then we have them on record refusing to protect workers' lives for the sake of expediency. Either way, we win. Within an hour, the education fair had transformed into an impromptu press conference. Lyria stood at the podium with Torres and other coalition leaders, addressing a crowd that included Administrator Walsh, 3 news reporters, and most of the colony's adult population. The Workers' Safety Coalition will lead the rescue operation, she announced, her teacher's voice carrying clearly through the room. But we will do so using the safety standards we've been advocating for months, standards that could have prevented this accident entirely. That could delay the rescue by hours, protested mine supervisor Hendricks. Those workers need help now. Those workers need competent help, Lyria replied firmly. Not rushed incompetence that creates more casualties. We will bring them out safely, but we will do it right. The rescue operation became a colony-wide event. Families gathered around viewing screens watching live feeds from the mine as properly equipped teams methodically worked to reach the trapped miners. Lyria coordinated surface operations while Torres led the underground team. Every move documented and broadcast for the entire colony to see. It took 6 hours, 4 hours longer than the administration's original plan would have required. But when the rescue teams emerged with all 3 workers alive and stable, the crowd's cheers could be heard from orbit. More importantly, the operation demonstrated something that hadn't been seen on Kepler 442 bits in years: humans and aliens working together as equals, their combined expertise and cooperation achieving what neither group could have managed alone. In the aftermath, as medical teams treated the rescued workers and families celebrated their safe return, Administrator Walsh approached Marcus and Lyria. I've been reviewing the coalition's safety recommendations, she said without preamble. In light of today's demonstration, I'm prepared to implement them immediately. All of them? Lyria asked. All of them. We'll also be restructuring mine operations to include joint human Zephyrian safety teams and equal representation in management decisions. As Walsh walked away to make her announcement to the press, Marcus pulled Lyria close. You did it, he said. You actually changed things. We did it, she corrected. All of us together. Looking around at the mixed crowd, human and Zephyrian families celebrating side by side, children playing together regardless of species, workers planning a safer future for everyone. Marcus realized that their unconventional marriage had become something much larger than a legal arrangement. They'd become the foundation for a new kind of community. One where love wasn't limited by biology, where families could be built from choice rather than just genetics, where 2 lonely people could create something beautiful from the ashes of loss. As Zen and Kira ran up to them, chattering excitedly about the rescue operation and their successful fair presentations, Marcus felt a profound sense of completion. Not the ending of their story, but the beginning of something bigger and more hopeful than anything he'd ever imagined. Lyrita smiled up at him, the radiant, unguarded smile that had become his favorite sight in any galaxy. And Marcus knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they'd face them the same way they'd started, together, building something beautiful from the raw materials of hope, determination, and love. The morning sun, or what passed for morning under Kepler 442 bits' artificial day cycle, streamed through the windows of their new apartment in Sector A. It was larger than Marcus's old place, with proper bedrooms for the children and a kitchen where Lyria could cook without bumping into furniture. Marcus woke to the sound of laughter from the main room, a sound that had become as essential to his daily routine as coffee and oxygen recycling checks. Rolling out of bed, he found Zen teaching Kira how to calibrate the holographic projector they'd upgraded after his success at the education fair. "Morning, Dad," Zen said casually, not looking up from his work. The words still sent a warm shock through Marcus's system. It had taken months for the children to start calling him that naturally, but now it felt as right as breathing. "Morning, troublemaker," Marcus replied, ruffling the boy's dark hair. "Where's your mother?" "Conference call with the Galactic Mining Consortium," Kira answered, wrinkling her nose in concentration as she adjusted the projector's focus. "She's been talking to important people all morning." Marcus found Lyria in their bedroom, dressed in the professional attire she wore for official business, a stark contrast to the desperate refugee he'd met a year ago. She was speaking rapidly in Standard to someone off-screen, her violet eyes bright with passion as she gestured emphatically. "The safety protocols we've implemented on Kepler 442 bits have reduced accidents by 73% while actually increasing productivity," she was saying. "These aren't just moral improvements, they're economic ones." Marcus waited quietly until she finished the call, then approached her with a cup of the herbal tea she preferred in the mornings. "How did it go?" he asked. "Better than expected." Lyria accepted the tea gratefully, leaning into his embrace. "The consortium wants to implement our safety model on 12 other colonies. They're offering me a position as Director of Interspecies Labor Relations." Marcus felt pride and concern warring in his chest. That sounds amazing. Also terrifying. Also like it would involve a lot of travel. It would mean being away from home frequently, Lyria admitted. But it would also mean helping thousands of families avoid what we went through. What do you think? Before Marcus could answer, Zen appeared in the doorway. "Did you tell him about the other thing?" the boy asked with barely contained excitement. "What other thing?" Marcus looked between them suspiciously. Lyria's cheeks took on that familiar lavender blush. "The consortium position comes with family benefits. Full education scholarships for the children, medical coverage, housing allowances." She paused, then spoke more quietly. "And fertility support for mixed-species couples who want to expand their families." The implications hit Marcus like a meteor strike. "You mean?" "I mean that if we wanted to have a baby together, a biological child, the medical technology exists now. It's expensive and complex, but possible." Marcus sat down heavily on the bed, overwhelmed. A year ago, he'd been a lonely bachelor. Now Lyria was talking about expanding their already miraculous family. "Is that something you want?" he asked carefully. "I want whatever will make our family complete," Lyria said. "If that means just the 4 of us, I'm happy. If it means adding more children, biological or adopted, I'm happy with that too." "What about you two?" Marcus asked, turning to where both children had somehow materialized in the doorway. "How would you feel about a baby brother or sister?" Zen and Kira exchanged one of those silent communications that siblings master. "We discussed it," Zen said solemnly. "We think it would be good. But only if the baby doesn't cry too much at night. And only if it likes the same foods we do," Kira added. "Because I don't want to learn to cook different things." Their matter-of-fact acceptance made Marcus laugh until tears streamed down his face. These children had adapted to every upheaval in their young lives with such grace that he sometimes forgot how extraordinary they were. "So what do you say?" Lyria asked, settling beside him on the bed. "Ready for our next adventure." Marcus looked around at his family, his wife whose strength continued to amaze him daily, his stepchildren who'd accepted him with open hearts, their little apartment that somehow contained more love than buildings 10 times its size. "I say yes to everything," he said finally. "The job, the travel, the baby, all of it. As long as we do it together." That afternoon, they walked to the memorial garden that had been built near the site of the old tunnel collapse. A crystalline monument rose from the center, inscribed with the names of all the miners who died in industrial accidents over the years. Cal's name was prominently displayed, along with a citation describing his heroic sacrifice. Lyria knelt and placed fresh flowers at the base of the monument, a weekly ritual she'd maintained since its construction. But today felt different somehow. "I used to come here to apologize to him," she said softly, "for falling in love again, for finding happiness without him. And now?" Marcus asked. "Now I come to thank him for teaching me what love looked like, so I could recognize it when it found me again in a different form." As they stood together in the garden, surrounded by other families paying their respects to lost loved ones, Marcus thought about the strange paths that had brought them all together. A mining accident had taken Cal's life, but set in motion the events that created their new family. Desperation had forced Lyria to make an impossible choice that turned into the foundation of lasting happiness. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we hadn't met that day in the market?" he asked. Lyria considered the question seriously. "I think we would have found each other eventually. Maybe not the same way, but somehow. Some connections are too strong to be left to chance." That evening, as they shared dinner around their small table, Zen animatedly describing his latest engineering project, Kira showing off her newest story, Lyria discussing her plans for the new job, Marcus felt the deep contentment that came from being exactly where he belonged. Their story had begun with desperation and convenience, but it had grown into something much more profound. Love, he'd learned, wasn't always the lightning strike of instant passion. Sometimes it was the slow burn of daily partnership, the gradual recognition that two people could create something together that neither could achieve alone. Outside their window, the lights of New Kepler City twinkled in the artificial twilight. The colony had grown and prospered under its new integrated management, becoming a model for interspecies cooperation throughout the galaxy. Humans and Zephyrians worked side by side in positions of equal authority. Their children attended integrated schools. Their families built lives together that transcended the arbitrary boundaries of biology and prejudice. And at the heart of it all was a simple truth that Marcus had learned from a desperate widow and her 2 children. Sometimes the most profound changes begin with the smallest acts of kindness, offered without expectation of reward to strangers who become family, creating ripples that spread far beyond what anyone could have imagined. As Lyria leaned against his shoulder and the children cleared the dinner dishes, Marcus Chen smiled and began planning their next impossible dream.